Level 1, the commander. You are the final authority in a city that has forgotten the meaning of life. The horizon is no longer a promise of a new day, but a jagged line of smoke and rising ash. Your medals are nothing more than cold pieces pinned to a shroud of failure. You walk through the corridors of power, but the only power remaining is the gravity pulling the rings toward the earth. The winehouse through the shattered glass, singing a eulogy for a million souls you can save. Every brick in this fortress is soaked with the sweat of men who die for a cause that evaporated in a nuclear flash. You look at the map on the wall, where red ink marks the place that have ceased to exist. Your skin is as pale as the concrete, merging with the architecture of this underground tomb. In the silence, the echo of your own footsteps sounds like the heartbeat of a dying god. Level 2, the command center. You sit in the command chair, the throne of a kingdom made of rubble and wire. The screens are dark, reflecting your emotionless face like a ghost trap in a black mirror. You type commands into a terminal that hasn't received a signal from the outside world in weeks. The static on the radio is the only voice left to keep you company in the long nights. Technology has failed, leaving you to manage the decline of a civilization that outpaced its own where it is. Time has no meaning here, only the interval between the breaths you take and the oxygen you waste. You remember when this room was filled with the frantic energy of officers who believed in victory. Now, the only strategy left is to endure the innovative for as long as your lungs allow. The burden command as a chain tightens around your throat every time you try to speak. You are the creator of a museum of catastrophes, documenting the final seconds of a species. Level 3, the broken radio. You press the headphones against your ears, desperate to hear anything other than the hum of the ventilation. The frequency is a wasteland of white noise, a desert of sound where no life can survive. You speak into the microphone, but your words are just vibration lost in the thick, still air. Is you there? You ask, knowing that the question is his own answer. The realization that you are truly alone is a cold blade that slides slowly between your ribs. You think of the voice you used to hear, the laughter that has been replaced by the roar of the fire. The world has become a closed circuit, a loop to pair that you can escape. Somewhere above the concrete, the stars are still shining, indifferent to the extinction of your world. You realize that the silence of the radio is not a technical failure, but a biological certainty of a world that has stopped breathing. The electricity fluctuates like the dying pulse of a patient who has long since given up the will to live. Every headline fracture in test walls is a map of the pressure building up within your own deteriorating mind. Level 4, the rations. You stare at the last remaining canister of processed nutrients. Agri sluts that's of preservative sips in the bitter salt of regret. Each bite is a calculated delay of the inevitable, a slow-motion suicide mass days as a desperate act of survival. The water from the taps comes out brownish and smelling of iron, a liquid ghost of the rivers that used to flow through green valleys. Your throat is a desert, and your stomach is a hollow chamber where the echoes of your hunger scream for a relief that will never come. The logistics of death are far simpler than the logistics of life, as the inventory of your existence shrinks to a handful of dry crumbs. You see a stranger in the reflection of your musket, a gunfighter whose eyes have retreated deep into the skull to hide from the light. The heating system failed 3 cycles ago, leaving you to wrap yourself in the cold flax of a nation that no longer occupies any purpose. You are burning the furniture just to feel a fleeting warmth that disappears the moment you close your eyes to sleep. Hunger is not a sharp pain anymore, but a dull, heavy weight that enters you to the floor of this concrete coffin. The numbers on the screen are a countdown to a 0 that you have already reached in your hurt many months ago. Level 5. The Ghost Battle Inn. You walk through the barracks where 500 men used to dream of home, but now only the dust remains to occupy the sheets. The booths are still polished, waiting for feet that have been vaporized or scattered across the radioactive plains outside. You read the names on the dock tags and realize you can no longer remember the face of the boys who once looked to you for salvation. The uniforms hang like hollow skins, shabby species that found its own skin too heavy to carry into the furor. You can almost hear the phantom louder and the clatter of rifles, a psychic residue trapped in the corners of this windowless tome. The letters home were never sent, and the addresses they were mined for are now just coordinated in the Scotch-based database. You are the last sentry of a graveyard, guarding the memories of people who were forgotten before they were even dead. The infirmary is a forest of rusted ivy stands and stained bandages, a testament to the futility of trying to mend what was meant to break. You pick up a piece of chalk and add your own name to the list, but there is no one left to read the final entry in the ledger. The silence in the barracks is louder than the orderly fire was, a deafening roar of absolute and total abandonment. You realize that leadership is a hollow performance when there is no one left in the audience to witness your resolve. You turn off the lights because the darkness is more honest than the artificial glow that pretends there is still a reason to see. Level 6, the surface. The jeers of the elevator grind as they pull you upward, away from the safety of the dark and toward the horror of the light. You prepare yourself for the first breath of air that hasn't been filtered through 1,000 layers of lead and charcoal. The heavy hatch grunts as you heave it open, the metal screeching like a wounded animal against the frozen hymns of your own personal purgatory. You step out onto the cracked asphalt, and the first thing that hits you is not the cold, but the absolute, suffocating absence of any sign of life. The sky above you is a bruised purple, a toxic tapestry of chemical clouds that hang low over the jagged skeletons of the skyscrapers you once swore to protect. Ash falls silently, a gray snow composed of the pulverized history of a million lives that have been ground into the dust by the jeers of war. You walk past the scorch-ripped pitch of a passenger bus, its metal frame twisted into a silent scream that no one will ever hear. The streets are a graveyard of machinery, where the skeletons of cars sit in eternal traffic jams, waiting for drivers who will never return. You look at the apartment blocks. Tier windows lie empty, Isaac staring blankly at the ruin of the civilization, they unsheltered. A turnbull board depicts a smiling family from a time when the word Fuhrer didn't taste like copper and smoke in your dry mouth. The river that once fed this city is now a scar on the earth, a drive-in in a corpse that has been blight white by the demons of total conflict. On the horizon, the fires of 1,000 smaller battles still flicker, the embers of a world that refuses to finish burning. Level 7, the Rhine Kingdom. You pick up a child's toy from the debris. A small soot-covered beer that represents the collateral damage of a war that had no room for innocence. You let the toy fall back into the ash, realizing that there is no one left to mourn the children, and no children left to mourn the word. You approach the great cathedral. Its spire snapped like a toothpick, a testament to the fact that even the heavens have abandoned this coordinate. Inside, the pews are filled with shadows and the thick, heavy scent of damp stone and forgotten prayers that never made it past the ceiling. The stained glass is shattered into a million jack memories, reflecting a distorted version of the man you were before you became a ghost. You stand before the altar and realize that the only god remaining in this city is the one of entropy, presiding over the slow decay of all things. The park where lovers once walk is now a forest of charred spikes, a garden of thorns where nothing will ever grow again. You touch the raw, dead bark of a tree and feel the absolute coolness of a planet that has been stripped of its thermal heart. You sit on a bench and watch the dust motes dance in the toxic air, finding a strange, horrific beauty in the finality of it all. The statues of heroes have been decapitated by the wind and the fire, their stone face buried in the bare dirt they died to defend. Level 8, the Desolation. You enter the Grand Library, where the collective knowledge of humanity has been reduced to pulse of gray flakes that disintegrate at your touch. Every great thought, every poem, and every scientific breakthrough is no just fuel for fire that has long since gone cold. You walk through the hospital wards where the beds are empty but the air is still heavy with the phantom pain of those who died in the dark. The tools of healing are now just instruments of irony, rusted and dull in a world where there is nothing left to save and no one left to heal. You find a row of oxygen tanks, tear gas all pointing to zero, a metaphor for the literal and spiritual asphyxiation of your entire race. You step into a bank vault where millions of dollars in paper currency lie scattered on the floor, worthless scraps of paper in a world without a market. You realize that the greed that fueled the fires of this war has finally consumed itself, leaving behind a wealth of nothingness. You climb to the highest roof in the city, the wine whipping your gray uniform as you survey the vast, Signed Kingdom of your own failure. Level 9. The Void. You look down from the precipice of the tallest building left standing, staring into the dark, yawning chasm of the city streets, where the shadows of the past seem to swirl in a sense of absolute and total annihilation. The wine screams in your ears with the force of a villain silence voice, a haunting chorus of the dead demanding to know why you, the architect of their final defense, are the only one left to witness this terminal silence. Your mind is the fractured landscape of broken orders, forgotten protocols, and tactical maps that no longer represent any physical reality on a planet that has been scarred clean by the fires of human ambition. You realize that your title of Last Commander is a cruel joke play by an indifferent humorous on a man who has nothing left to come in but the writhe missile of irradiated breathing. There are no civilians left to protect, no soldiers left to let into the breach, and no enemies left to kill in this absolute vacuum where the concept of victory has been rendered obsolete by the reality of extinction. You scream your defiance into the abyss until your limbs burn, but the sound is swallowed by the thick, heavy atmosphere before it can even leave the boundaries of your isolated and crumbling consistence. The isolation is no longer just a feeling but a physical weight, a crushing atmospheric pressure that makes every movement of your limbs feel like a desperate struggle against the tide of liquid lit. You find yourself whispering to the flickering shadows on the concrete walls, begging to take shape tell you that this entire catastrophe is merely a fever dream born of radiation and psychological trauma. But the shadows remain flat, silent, and stubbornly two-dimensional, utterly indifferent to your pleas for a single sliver of human contact or a solitary crumb of meaningful interaction in dead world. Your memories are beginning to blur and fray at the edges. The faces your loved ones are shoving up to you the same ray static that now defines the horizon of your physical and mental existence. You are the final biological witness to the slow-motion suicide of a species that spent its entire history primed from this very primitive absolute ological irreversible self-destruction. The weight of being the final repository of all human history and culture is a burden that no human mind was ever designed to carry throughout the endless, cold dark of a post-nuclear winter. You feel the very edges of your sanity snapping like the rusted, overstrained cables of the elevator that brought you to this high, lonely place of final contemplation and despair. There is no one left to tell your story, no one left to learn from the staggering skill of your mystics, and no one left to whip for the world to die while you busy trying to save it. Level 10. The Cycle. You turn away from the edge of the roof. Your heavy boots crunching on the shattered remains of a civilization that foolishly believed it was built to be shatterproof and eternal. You begin the long descent back into the darkness of the bunker, the mechanical repetition of your own survival becoming the only rhythm left in a universe that has forgotten the sound of music. You return to the windowless tom of your command center because the cold, honest light of the dead world above is far too painful for your eyes to bear for in the second. You sit back down in your hibernation chair and pick up a pen, intending to write the final, definitive entry in a logbook that you know with absolute certainty no one will ever read. As you write, you realize with a cold horror that every word you scratch into the paper has been written 1,000 times before in the smoldering ruins of 1,000 other failed empires. The history of humanity is not a progress bar, but a circle of blood and iron. A relentless loop that begins in the primitive mud and ends in the radioactive ash of its own technological hoppers. You look at the clock on the wall to stop at the exact moment of the first strike and realize that it isn't actually broken, but has simply reached the ultimate and final destination of all time. Somewhere in the deep, forgotten past, and their commander sat in their ruin, feeling the exact same cold grip of failure that now tightens its icy fingers around your weary and defeated heart. And somewhere in the impossible future, if the earth ever finds the strength to breathe again, some new creature will find your bleached bones and be thrown upon the site of your greatest defeat. They will draw new, arbitrary borders on new, fragile maps, and they will forge new, terrible weapons to protect things already destined to be destroyed by the next turn of the wheel. The flags will change the colors and the names of the gods will shift with the wind, but the outcome of the grand game will remain as fixed and unchanging as the dead stars in the void above. You close the logbook for the last time and lean back into the shadows, listening to the slow, rhythmic dripping of water in the deep, dark corners of your concrete sanctuary. Drip, drip, Driv the metronome of the apocalypse marks the final second till the scorched earth finally purchase the you and the world you loved, wherever truly here at all. You close your eyes, surrender your useless title to the silence, and wait for the darkness to finally complete the circuit of the only thing that truly lasts in this universe, the end.